Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm going to be talking about some of the more questionably designed cards in the Pokemon TCG, specifically, of course, talking about the standard format. And these are cards that, people talk about as not really liking so much. And I'm going to talk about them and talk about whether or not their design is bad and like how that just what Pokemon maybe should have done or things like that. But also with these cards, I have four of them today, and I will be doing a video in the future talking about, and this is for custom card creators in my Discord and separately, I guess. I'm going to be doing I guess like a challenge or something where you can submit how you would change these cards and rework them so they're maybe a little more fun to play against. So you can send that in Discord. But anyways, let's just hop right in. So first of all, we have Badu, and I guess I should say these cards. I said, they're not so fun to play against. That's not the only thing that makes a card well designed, though. Obviously, it needs to be fun to play with, and it also needs to be like somewhat balanced. I think these cards are fair for balance. They're all strong, but I think they're within the realm of fair. It's only one of these, one or two are like really balance is part of the problem. I think Badu is it does 30 HP. It only does 10 damage. Like, it's not super insanely strong. It's like strong. I'd say it's probably like in the top 10 Pokemon in the format, but there are stronger Pokemon in the format. There's one that we'll talk about that I think is pretty clearly stronger. But Badu it's strong, right? If you say it's too strong, then I could see that. But there's not really a clear way to nerf it. Maybe I guess the most clear way to nerf it would be reducing or increasing its attack cost by one colorless. Or I guess it could be not a colorless, but then it obviously isn't a baby Pokemon like the others. The baby Pokemon all have 30 HP for your treat, free attack cost. This means you can use it turn one, going second really easily without like needing to build around it. You can just really set it up in essentially every deck. And it's very good for setup based decks, right? If you're playing a fast deck, something like Rageable EX or something like that, where you're looking for a turn one attack. And then you're probably not going to be playing Badu, but Badu is something that you can slot into most decks. It's like a one of. You don't really need it. It's more than that, but some decks you might. It's played commonly in something like Gardevoir, where you're really trying to set up and you're not as consistent without the other Curlia. And then you're also not using Techno Machine Evolution, which you could have been using in other builds of it, certainly pre-rotation. And then you're kind of setting up your Monkey Doors, getting energy there, and then like getting energy in the discard for Gardevoir EX, and just kind of getting stuff going. And then Dragapult EX as well is the other deck where you're using Badu, and you might be playing, multiple Badus again, potentially in these decks. So you're trying to set up your Drakelokes and get energies on your Dragapults. Monkey Door is a card that's really hard to get energies on, and so you need to buy some time. And if you buy time with Badu, you might be able to do that to be in a better position to do more damage and heal and just do a lot of really powerful things there. It's something that again is in these decks that we're already good, right? It's not like I think the main reason why people might defend Badu is that it makes these like slower decks better. But what it does make them better, but they're already good, right? It's making decks that are good better, and it's not really helping out bad decks. Like, the only deck that I'd say isn't very good that it helps out substantially is like Frostlass based decks, which isn't really, it's like Badu Frostlass, right? Badu Frostlass Monkey is kind of the core of this deck, and this deck I think is pretty bad without Badu. You could kind of make some stuff, come together, use like Maractus or something like that. But this deck is not super strong, but it's better with Badu. And then, I guess random stage two decks are a little bit better with Badu, but it's not like they're meta, right? Something like, Charizard is not a random stage two deck. That also Badu kind of like hurts that because you're relying on rare candy. So like stage two decks that are evolving slower or evolution decks that are evolving slower, it helps, but it doesn't help rare candy. So it kind of just makes things less fun. There are less things that you can do, which generally isn't so good unless, this is like a counter card. It's not exactly a pure counter card. It's countering items, but it's not like it's here for countering some specific item. but it kind of just reduces things that you can play, which isn't so fun. So that's definitely a bit of a problem. There are a lot of cards like this that are like counter Wally cards. I was going to consider talking about Mimikyu. I didn't end up doing that, but that's a Wally card. Same thing with Cornerstone Ogre Pontiac. Some people really don't like Mimikyu specifically, but also Ogre Pontiac. It's not super fun to play against, but it does lead to some interesting game plans. But it doesn't, right? It just kind of slows the game down, and it doesn't even like progress the person who's playing Badoo that much more than their opponent all the time. If there are strong engines, we can like build up your hand and then better build up your board state without having to like Badoo for like 10 turns. Not that you're Badooing for 10 turns, but you're kind of drawing slowly, not necessarily just top decking all the time, but you're relying on your top decks and like your supporters that aren't like insanely strong. You're not like researching and ioning all the time. You're just drawing, maybe you're gonna use an Arvin, something like that, to kind of get a little closer to where you want to be. And then your opponent might also hit back with another Badoo, so you're just kind of like staring at each other, but doing back and forth. And you can't really develop your board state. Insanely well. It's not like you're really getting a lot of benefit out of Badoo. You're getting a tiny bit of damage and a little bit of development on your board state. So it's not like it creates interesting situations in general. I just haven't really seen that almost ever, honestly. Even in like the decks where Badoo's good, specifically, I mean, it's good in a lot of decks, but where it really shines in Gardevoir and Dragapult. I guess the most interesting thing is to play with Badoo is like, getting your Dracloaks, getting, as I mentioned, Geomonkey Dory, and just getting a stronger board state. But then that's like not really fun to play against either. Badoo overall, I think item lock cards aren't. I don't really like any item lock card personally. I don't think any of them have been super fun that I can think of. There are some that are stronger, which leads to the game being faster, and the game kind of actually like ends. You have like Vikavolt V, for example, which does 50. It's 2 energy, but you can pay a turn 1 potentially. And Seismitoad EX, which does 30, and that was also in an era where Pokemon had less HP, specifically the ones we were playing. It was basic 2 prizers, and they had less HP as well. So they the Pokemon that were the item lock Pokemon were doing more damage. And then I personally like, I've talked about this card some. It's a card that's pretty beloved by the Pokemon TCG community. I think so. There's 2 Garbodors. There's the one, the Trash Lance one, and the Garbotoxin one. Garbodor with the Garbotoxin. There's actually 2 of them. People kind of like. I don't like this. I'm not gonna lie. It's another hard lock card, and it's not super fun, in my opinion. But some people do like it, and it did some like kind of interesting things to the game, I guess. But then Trash Lance is one that does 20 for each item in your opponent's discard pile, and this punishes your opponent from playing lots of items. If they play 20 items in the first 2 turns, they're definitely gonna lose because you're just one-shotting everything with a single prizer for 1 energy. And you can make it even better if you're like, well, that's like actually not strong enough. We can like tone it up. And I'd actually, I said I wanted you to come up with ideas for new cards, but I'm also going to come up with some myself. And a Badoo here, I'd say it should do damage based on the items in your opponent's discard pile, or something like that. I'm just not a big fan of the card design in the current state. Then the next card we have here is Dustmore, though. Dustmore there's also Dusclops. I'll mention that. Dusclops and Expanded is actually horrendously designed. I mean, is Dusclops banned? I don't think Dusclops is banned. I think the basic is banned. So that's not a good sign. It was banned because of the Duskull, or sorry, the Dusclops, but whatever. That's like a niche interaction that you just kind of like win turn 1. So ignoring that. Dustorm is a card that knocks itself out, puts 13 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. It generally like kind of trades evenly with prizes. It's a card that's a stage 2, so you're doing that. You're like spending resources to trade evenly. However, that's not exactly always what happens. The big problem, in my opinion, with this card, like it kind of can destroy board states, and that's not so fun. It's like an essentially incredibly powerful spread card in terms of taking knockouts. Then your opponent's Pokemon are essentially all knocked out. Not necessarily all of them, but like all their previous evolutions to their main attacker are knocked out. And then they lose, right? They can't really do anything. He'll attack, and then you'll be up on prizes because you'll have like some free turns of attacking, and you'll just kind of win. So it's really good in that regard, and it's not super hard to set up. And it's like very good at Dragapult. But then it also has Another thing is that it knocks itself out, and it's not like a big detriment. I mean, it's a detriment to knock yourself out, but it's not the end of the world. And then it allows you to be down on prizes and manipulate things like Iono and Counter Catcher, which are strong cards. They're fair cards when used normally, and you can kind of play around with them to get good benefits. But with Dustmore, they're kind of insane and kind of breaking the dynamics of the game and how they're intended to be used. Dustmore, I don't think is a big problem, but there are times when it's really annoying and it feels like a really annoying spread card. And speaking of spread, though, we have Dragapult EX. Dragapult EX has a few different things we to talk about. Of course, the first thing is just its attacks really strong. This card is arguably too good. I don't think it's the best card on this list. Arguably, it's actually the worst, but it's still very good. And it's a main attacker. It's like incredibly good in the TCG right now. It's arguably the best deck in the game, and it has good damage, it has good HP, it has no weakness, and it has a payable attack. The attack cost is the hardest issue, but it also has the best middle evolution in the game outside of maybe Dusclops. Dusclops is kind of different, though. Actually, no, Dusclops is very different, but Dragapult with Dracoloak makes it a lot better, honestly. And then the card's just super strong and really annoying because there aren't ways to counter outside of the Lily's Clefairy EX, which is a counter to it, but it's not like a perfect counter because you trade evenly unless you have the tool in Lily's Clefairy EX. Um, which then would mean you trade positively, I guess, but they're also sprinkling damage on your bench in the meantime. So, Dragapult EX is a card that is it's so strong and so hard to counter. And I think the lack of interesting counterplay is the issue. You kind of like one-shot it, but then if you have a metagame focused on one-shotting it, then that's so much damage, and everything's getting one-shotted. So again, there's not great counterplay outside of Lily's Clefairy EX, which, as I said, has limitations. You could pair it with Mew EX and do some kind of crazy combos. I mean, talking about Gardevoir plays Lily's Clefairy EX and generally plays Mew EX as well. It doesn't always do that, but it enables that potential combo for some pretty crazy stuff there. For taking one shots on more than one shot. So Dragapult EX, you one shot it and you also sprinkle damage on the bench. So I think the damage on the bench is okay. It's obviously very strong, but it's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting and unique. So I don't hate that about Dragapult, but everything else about it is also so strong, and that's where I think it gets a little problematic. This is a simple card if you're messing with it. I think it should just be weaker. I don't have great insight into this card, but it is very, very strong. Last card we have, though, is Pheasantipede EX. This card has the ability to flip the script. And it says if one of your Pokemon is knocked out during your opponent's last turn, then you can draw 3 cards, and this ability doesn't stack. So this ability is quite good. And another card we have to talk about with this is Oricorio GX. Oricorio GX is a card that is essentially the same, right? It has Dance Tribute, which is essentially the same as Flip the Script. It actually, they stack together. But anyways, the big difference, though, is because Pheasantipede EX is really good, Oricorio GX was like kind of mediocre. This data isn't like super. It's missing some stuff, but it was a solid card. It was like a fair card. And this is pointed out actually by YouTuber Ember Power as well as some other people. And it's that it has better stats. This isn't that long ago. So Oricorio GX is like it's weaker, right? It has the same retreat cost, but it has worse attacks substantially. Not the Pheasantipede EX's attack is used all that often, but it is pretty decent. Then it has higher HP, and that's a pretty big deal. It's a card. It only has one retreat. One retreat is pretty common on these types of Pokemon, but Pheasantipede EX has a really good ability, and I don't hate its ability. I actually like its ability. It does kind of prevent counterplay of Iono, which is kind of I don't actually mind. I'm not a big Iono fan. I mean, I kind of like it. I generally like it in terms of card design, but I can find it a little annoying at the end of the game, where you can kind of just like dead draw, and that's not super fun to just not really do anything, especially if you get like Badoo. Not that that's really gonna be happening, but that's like really annoying. But Pheasantipede EX, bails you out of those situations some, which is kind of nice, and it's really good. It's really good at like every point in the game. In my opinion, it's by far the best Pokemon in the game. I mean, Dragapult EX is really good, but it's very different. But comparing, I'd say Pheasantipede is much better than Badoo. Not that Badoo's bad. Badoo's very good, but Pheasantipede EX, I mean, it's played in almost every deck in the game because it's really good. So, its numbers are really good. I think it should be weaker because it's not a liability on the bench. If you look at I mean, it kind of is, but if you look at like Raging Bull, Raging Bull's supposed to be a really fast deck. Pheasantipede EX isn't super fast. It's kind of counterintuitive. I mean, it's really good, so that's why it's in the deck, but it doesn't lean into all the same elements. But then you look at Tiamat Zogerpon EX, which has the same HP as Pheasantipede EX. Squawkabilly EX and Mew EX have less HP. Latias EX has the same HP. So I think its HP is high. And overall, its stats are just very good for a card that already is very good with its ability. But I'm interested in hearing your thoughts down below on these cards. And as I said, I'd love to look at your custom variations on these cards to see if we can maybe change these cards to a way that's more fun. But I hope you enjoyed. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, all the good stuff. And as Osmond said, see you in the next video.